Yay, a Mr. Munchkins man.
Give me all your lunch monies.
You in what armies?
The Mr. Munchkins man's army. Come here, boy.
No!
There are quite a few enemies in Lethal Company, and it's no secret that some enemies are given a little more love than the others. And one of these, in my opinion, is the Maneater, the most recent creature to be added to the game. It's related to cockroaches, surviving in caves where it eats decaying matter and anything else that may or may not have nutrients. When encountering an employee, man-eaters will instantly imprint on them, following them around the facility or whatever other interior for as long as they're content. But any first-time employee should know that they're incredibly prone to crying for a number of reasons. And if you make the mistake of not tending to their needs and keeping them out of harm's way, you'll quickly discover exactly where they got their name. Now, in case it wasn't obvious already, I absolutely love this thing. Everything about its unique mechanics, to its model, and especially its sound design, comes together to create Lethal Company's most captivating and horrifying creature yet. I'm Isaiah of Thunderhold Productions, back for another Lethal Yap session, and today, I'll be explaining what makes the Maneater Lethal Company's best designed creature. Now I know, saying it's the best might come off as a little strange, considering it's still fairly new and could be seen as recency bias, but I beg to differ. If anything, recency bias usually makes things in Lethal seem worse than they are, because of how little time people have had to actually adapt to the changes. But even with that, what makes the Maneater so worthy of praise? Well, let's begin with its model. Starting off, the Maneater's baby model is adorable. Everything about it, from the way it waddles around, to how it rolls out of a vent when spawning, and even the way it falls over after sitting for too long like a stupid idiot. There's also the extra attention to detail given with it becoming bloated after eating scrap. Frankly, most lethal monsters don't get this kind of attention, because the player isn't meant to spend much time around them. The only real exception I can think of is the butler, with the way it looks around to make sure nobody is nearby before attacking lone players. This is the amount of complexity more creatures in Lethal should have, in my opinion. It makes the atmosphere of the game better by making the entities feel more real, and thus making the planets feel more lived in. But what do I mean by this? Well, most monsters in Lethal just go about their day, which, while fine for gameplay purposes, makes the entire game less immersive. All of these creatures living in relative harmony just doesn't make much sense. That's why seeing a creature with so many extra details is so refreshing and exciting, and it's part of what makes the Maneater so great. But that's only scratching the surface. After all, there's still the adult form to talk about. How Zeekers managed to so perfectly transition the most adorable thing in the game to the most horrifying, I'll never know, but they cooked a 5-star meal to say the least. Picture this. You make the mistake of dropping an item with the Maneater in your inventory. You didn't think it through, but you'll figure it'll just calm down when you rock it. But it throws up, and in the back of your mind, you feel as if you made a crucial mistake. As you frantically try to calm it down, it springs out of your hands, and you hear the cracks of its exoskeleton suddenly elongating, its body growing impossibly fast. You feel your body hair stand on end as the child you once swore to protect has become the very thing trying to kill you. It's powerful, not just physically, but emotionally. Its wide mandibles, eager to dig into you. Its long front limbs that'll ensure it doesn't let go once it catches you. Its stature sells the idea that it has lost all innocence that it once held, despite how desperately it may try to convince you otherwise. But I can't talk about how much I love this thing's appearance forever, so it's time to move into the mechanics and balancing. One of Zeeker's jobs as Lethal's sole developer is to make sure that an enemy can be strong without being overpowered, and as counterplay to balance out its strength. The Maneater, as you might have guessed, is a perfect example of this as well. Essentially, everything the Maneater does, from walking around to crying and being aggro, is in your control. As long as you pick it up and drop it once about every 20 seconds, it won't start crying without an outside influence, such as a player noise or the noise of another creature. It's actually pretty easy to pacify it as long as you understand the mechanics of it. This is the part of the video where I'm obligated to mention how much of a little guy the Maneater is. This is for you, Atlas. This is your fault. But aside from that, your job is basically just to play it safe if you're the one tasked with watching over the child, assuming you're not playing single player, in which case, that's your job either way. I will say that this mechanic is quite a bit less forgiving in solo runs, mainly because you'll be the only one who can drop items and you'll be encountering all of the monsters yourself. However, I think this is more of a problem with the solo gameplay as a whole, and as long as you have a shovel, it most likely won't be too much of an issue. And on that note, let's talk about killing the Maneater. Specifically, with the shovel, knife, and shotgun, because these are probably the three most common ways, aside from maybe spike traps, that people can use to kill Maneaters. With a shovel, the basic strat is to shut a door right as the Maneater is about to launch towards you, and from there you can hit it and loop around to do it again. It's a simple and effective strategy that still involves a good amount of risk. The strategy with the knife is to create enough space in a long hallway to be attacked immediately, but still be able to run away, and then stab the Maneater. A lot. This one I wouldn't consider cheese, it's just good spacing and timing. The one method I do have a gripe with, though, is the shotgun. To be clear, I'm not opposed to damage not being completely universal, or in other words, some monsters taking more or less damage from certain sources. After all, the butler only needs to be stabbed once before it dies, with the logic being that a hole is poked in its suit and it pops, releasing a bunch of hornets which are controlling it, yada yada yada. The issue I do have is that 5 shots is too many for a creature of its size and danger level, especially compared to how easy it can be killed by other means. I would balance this by making it able to take 2 shots before dying. That's it. That's the only change I would ever really want to make to this thing. Aside from maybe patching some of the wall cheese that you can do outside of the facility and in mansions and whatnot. After all, you can still trap it behind a terminal door, or in main on mineshaft interiors. I think that's fair. And also, any fire exit with a locked door works pretty well too. It also has a unique playstyle, where instead of the usual chase the player endlessly style, it waits in its nest and tries to bait players towards it, luring them in with fake cries with some more artificial sounding than others. Then, when you're in range, it scampers forward with all its might. If it fails to catch you, it will chase until you're either far enough away, in which case it will go back to its stalking phase, or until you're close enough for it to attack again. It's a simple system, and it's one that's much more consistent than the rocket science that is dealing with baboon hawks, because no matter what I do, I'm just dead if they decide to attack me, because if I walk into them and it doesn't work, apologies. Anyway, our final segment, and the one I've been most eager to talk about, sound design. This thing's sound design is what, in my opinion, makes it the most terrifying thing in the game. Let's analyze the two crying sounds for a moment and compare them. Here, the cries are genuine. They're coming from a place of sadness, a feeling of betrayal. Lots of things can lead up to this: abandonment, fear, uncertainty. All of these are conveyed in the short, shrill sounds of the man-eater's cries. And now, on to the next sound clip. Huh, that's not right. It should be. Uh oh. That sound invokes pure dread and anxiety every time I hear it in a game. There's nothing more terrifying, especially when you're alone, to hear lurking around the corner. Now, rather than it being a sound of fear, it conveys hunger, anger. Even the original cries we've come to know as sad are nothing but an act used to make you into food. And at the end of the day, It was entirely your fault. Except for when a thumper tries to, eat you or something, but that's not important. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this yap session. I went all out for this one and got my friends to make some custom art. So big thanks to them for making this all possible. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments below. That's all for now. So as always, have a thunderific day.